Hello and happy, beautiful day to you. Today, I want to talk about stepping into even more feelings of peace and also starting to let go of feelings of loss or grieving and really create a shift back to feeling like it really is a beautiful day, but creating that shift. Now, part of the reason that I want to talk about this is because so often I'll see people who are impacted by grief. Maybe it's grief of a loved one, like a human being, or even grief of an animal. And I've seen it so often where it's affecting somebody's health and they're having some type of physical reaction due to the loss or the grieving. And I want to take a moment and talk about that because I've seen it just more and more and more where people are getting stuck in that spiral and that hurt, even if they don't realize it. And so first and foremost, before we dive in deeper, I just want to ground this for a moment. Sometimes, a lot of times, the mind-body connection, it can feel invisible. But if we stop and think about it for a moment, it is well documented in medical research. We know that if a senior loses a spouse, we know they can have a tendency to have a higher rate of death following their loss. It's called the widowhood effect. So it's very, very well known. Or unfortunately, a person can lose a loved one and they can die from a broken heart. And so we can see, using both of these examples that are well backed by research, that losing a loved one can impact the mind-body connection. It can impact us physically and our health. Now, if we take a step back from that for a moment, what I've seen all of the time is I've seen people who have been in a state of grieving, who have other symptoms show up, who end up in the hospital or end up having, illness or cough or like all kinds of different reactions due to loss. And part of the problem and part of the reason that I'm bringing this up is I see that some people, the way that they're processing the loss is actually increasing the problem. And that's what I want to talk about, is that, unfortunately, when we experience loss, it doesn't feel good as human beings typically, but the more that we can shift our emotions and our mindset in a positive direction, it is good for our energy, for our health, for our life, for our soul, for our being. And sometimes I've seen people, and I'm seeing this more and more and more, where people think the opposite is true. They think that maybe immersing themselves into the negative is what's going to help. So I've seen people who have beliefs that says, just sit with the negative, or just cry it out. Or they'll sit there and they'll go through every single photo of the past loved one or past animal, and they go through it over and over. And what's happening is they end up really increasing all of these negative emotions. And they think that it's helpful because it's going to help them to shift. But the problem is it actually creates more negativity, and it's hard on the body. Now, by the way, I've had some people say, well, there's different schools of thought, about how to grieve and what is best for you. But if you stop and think about the research for a moment, when somebody has died of a broken heart, typically it's at a very intense emotional state. Okay, or even with the widowhood effect, when a senior loses a spouse and then dies, the highest rate of death is immediately following that loss. So the further they get out, they have a longer chance to survive, but right afterwards, there's a higher rate of death. My point is that when the emotions are the most intense is when they're worse for a person. And so my point is that so often I'm seeing people who are trying to process their emotions, and they're doing their best to do it in a healthy way, but then they end up doing it in a way that, instead of helping to release the emotions, ends up increasing the emotions and creating more problems. And now, by the way, if you ask me in the last month how many times I've seen this, a handful, probably 10, 11 times. In the past month and a half, of people who've lost something, an animal, some type of animal or person or whatnot. And I see people who have increased that. And then they have some type of health issue. And then they reach out and they say, okay, well, what's happening? And unfortunately, it's connected to the loss of an animal, a person, or something. And so my point is that Number one is so often I'll see people who are unfortunately increasing the problem on accident, so inadvertently doing that. So that's number one. And number two, what I'd recommend is really, part of the thing is that, if we lose a loved one, you can feel like you're spiraling, like you don't want to accept it, you don't want it to happen, and it feels like this loss, and you feel like it hurts, and by the way, I say that it hurts. Now, technically speaking, if I'm just technically honest with all input, and technically it doesn't have to hurt. I mean, let's be honest. There are cultures who actually celebrate when a person dies, and that's throughout history. So it doesn't have to. But I think in our culture, the way that most people process death and the loss of somebody is it hurts. Okay, but ultimately, what we'd want to do is, in those moments or when that happens, is really decide how you want to feel. Decide how you want to feel and process it. Because I've seen some people where they have lost a person that they love and they still feel angry at that person. So the anger is still affecting them, or the loss or the grief or the hurt or resentment. I've seen people be angry at somebody for dying. And so my point is these emotions can affect people's health and life in a variety of different ways. And so if you decide how you want to feel, and what is the new way that you want to feel, to accept what is happening, but accepting it in a positive way, can be pivotal. Now, this is one way to look at it. So I'm going to invite you. Now, this might not be where you are now, or maybe this is very helpful for you. But, a lot of times if you see me work with people and show them how to release pain and create all kinds of changes, depending upon where they are, I help people to create different shifts that help them to release pain or, create radical shifts in their health. And so my point is, I'm going to give you a mindset shift right here that you could use if you'd like. And maybe you're here yet, maybe you're not. But here's an idea, is that one thing that I've had people do is take in the awareness that sometimes our journeys together here on life, they don't last forever. And a way to think about this is like this, is think about an amazing vacation that you took. Like let's say you went to Hawaii, or you went to the Caribbean, or you went to New York or London or California, wherever. You went somewhere that you love. There's so many beautiful places in this world, that you went somewhere and you had an amazing time. Now, when you come back, you don't have to mourn the loss of it. You can say, okay, let me go on another vacation somewhere else coming up or whatnot, right? So my point is that we can continue to plan looking forward for great, wonderful, amazing times. Similarly, let's say we're on this planet and we have a journey with somebody who we absolutely love, and then their journey runs out and they're no longer in this physical planet. The way that we could look at it is, of course, is appreciating the time that we had, is feeling like, okay, that was a wonderful journey together, like a wonderful vacation, if you will, but that was a wonderful journey. We had 10 years together, or 20 years, or 30 years, whatever it is, and it was a wonderful journey, and I'm grateful for it. And now, to move on, let me think about the next journey. What's the next one? What's the next one you create that you love, that you move on to? Now, by the way, I've seen and worked with people who have been stuck in a place of mourning, and they've lost a loved one or a spouse, and they felt like they couldn't move their life forward, and they had been stuck for years and years in this grieving process. And when they started to look at it in this new way, and they said, it's like they gave themselves permission to be able to go to the next level, to be able to say, okay, I can appreciate that journey, and appreciate that journey with that human being or animal or whatever it was, and now I can take the next journey and the next journey and the next journey, because life is full of different journeys. And so that is one way that you could look at it, is exactly like that. And by the way, if you ask me if I've ever worked with people to help them to shift out of all kinds of health issues because they were having some type of illness due to the loss of a loved one, or hurt or grief or whatnot, absolutely. And I've seen people do it all of the time. Now, of course, it's usually a combination of emotions, so multiple different factors, but I've seen it time and time and time again. And so food for thought, that if you are somebody who is experiencing some type of loss or some type of grief or whatnot. I have absolute compassion. I get it. I think we've all been there. The longer we live here, we end up losing people that we love or animals that we absolutely love, and being able to become whole again, to be able to take more and more journeys in life, to take the next journey and the next journey and the next journey, and to love it, and to open your heart to the next journey and the next journey and the next journey is, of course, key, and to fall in love with life over and over and over again. So, I think we've all been there at some point in time of loss, and to be able to do that, to reopen your heart and to go to the next level and to keep going and to genuinely create that shift is good, of course, for your heart, your energy, your happiness, your healing, your transformation, all of it, to make the most of this beautiful life that we have. And so that's the insight that I wanted to share with you today, is exactly that, is just, if you are somebody who has, even if the person or animal or whatnot, loved thing, being, passed many, many years ago, creating that shift, giving yourself that freedom to embrace the change, and also simultaneously, if you are in a place where, and I can't tell you how often I've seen this, where people are kind of, unfortunate to say, torturing themselves with the loss, where they're feeling it over and over and feeling the loss and stewing on the loss, and keeping in mind that, unfortunately, the more negative emotions that occur, the more that can affect your health and your life. And sometimes people will think that, if you just immerse yourself into it, then that's when your body releases it. But if you think about how the brain works, that's not how it works. If you think about the brain for a moment, if you think about neural pathways, like our minds are programmed, right? And so if somebody immerses themselves in the alphabet, it's not going to help them forget it. It programs it in. If somebody immerses themselves in a song and they listen to a song over and over and over again, it doesn't get rid of the song, it programs it in further. And so similarly, if a person's going over and over things in their head over and over and over again, it doesn't release it. Instead, it imprints it more and more and more and more and more. And so often I'll see people who are doing that, where they're really ultimately wanting to release the negativity, but they're sitting in it. And unfortunately, that can increase it. So inviting you to really be willing to create that shift towards feeling better, towards allowing yourself to really open your heart, move forward, and enjoy the life, to live it fully, to love fully, to enjoy fully. So food for thought on this topic, just, again, seeing it a lot around. And so I hope this has helped you. And as always, I want to ask you to please do take just a quick moment to hit the share button on this episode. Share it with somebody you love, somebody you care about, or somebody you don't even know, because the more that every single person really can live a happy, healthy, beautiful, full life, it's good for their soul, their health, everything, life. So on that note, please do hit the share button. And then also on that note, if you are somebody who would like a deeper understanding of how mind-body healing works, there's also a link in the show notes of free training where you can understand that at a deeper level. And I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So please do. I wish you an incredible rest of your day. Please do have an incredible rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. We'll see you there.